Chapter 199. This time, there was no boulder for her to look down on, but she was already familiar with the performance of the horn bow. Instead of dodging immediately, she began to shoot arrows from a distance with all her might. She did not stop shooting arrows one after another. Every time, the bow was almost fully drawn. She did not use her eyes to aim, but used her mental power to accurately position the arrow. When several female Amazon warriors arrived at the scene, they saw such an inhuman scene. She shot a rain of arrows from a distance of 300 meters. Nearly 40 arrows were shot out by her in less than a minute. The hit rate was as high as 90%, or even a little higher. The 5 wild boars, including the first little pig, were all pierced with arrows. Some had 7 or 8 arrows, and some had 5 or 6 arrows. 2 of them were shot to death on the spot, and the remaining few were barely breathing. It was only a matter of time before they died. Thea waved at them from a distance, as if she was asking for draft paper in an exam. "Hey! I've run out of arrows. Can you give me some?" The few of them looked at each other in dismay. "You shot too fast." In the past, they pursued a fatal shot, and 2 quivers of arrows were more than enough. However, looking at Thea's impressive record, they could not say that her arrow rain was nonsense. The female warriors were very upright, and the level of their skills was obvious at a glance. At least they had lived for so many years and had never heard of anyone doing this. They still felt sincere admiration for others who could do what they could not do. They each had arrows with them, but there were not many. The 3 of them pooled together and gave her another quiver. Thea continued to shoot arrows at the wild boars that were not dead. According to the rules of the Amazons, the death of the prey was considered a result, and they could not let the female warriors help. They could only shoot arrows one by one into the fatal parts of the dying wild boars. Soon, the remaining few pigs were shot to death. It should be about time, right? Sia felt that 8 wild boars were enough. The dark and strong woman might fight for the last second, but she was not so eager to win. Going too far was as bad as falling short. For this meaningless battle, she was too lazy to play. She just wanted to find a way to go back to her original time and space. If she could not go home, not to mention the name of Artemis, even if you gave her the name of Zeus, it would be useless. "Pack up and go out," she turned to the female warrior who was tying the dead boars with ropes. "Miss Thea, it's only been less than an hour." "You?" One of the female warriors tried to explain to her how sacred and noble it was, but she swallowed the words on the tip of her tongue when she saw her resolute expression. They sped up their movements. It was almost impossible for the 4 of them to transport 8 pigs out. Fortunately, they had Thea, who was suspected to be the reincarnation of Hercules, to help them. Using 2 strands of rope to tie the pigs together, they could still pull them out by force. The 3 of them each carried one while Thea pulled the long string by herself. As they were slowly walking out, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her back. Someone launched a sneak attack. She immediately thought that the 3 female warriors were going to use underhanded means, but in the next moment, she judged that it was not the case. The danger came from the sky. He threw the rope away and rolled sideways on the spot, dodging the fierce attack from the sky. Thea was a little shaken when she saw who the enemy was. Damn! Why is it another eagle? She couldn't tell what species the creature that had ambushed her was, but it wasn't small at all. It was dark gray all over, 1 meter long, with a wingspan of 3 meters. It had a sharp hook-shaped beak. After missing its attack, it returned to the sky and stared at Sia with its 2 fierce eyes. Thea felt that her reputation with the eagle tribe had solidified into hatred. Why was every eagle looking at her as if she was an enemy? This was too illogical. Your boss can still live for more than 200 years. What method did you use to determine the murderer of the god slayer so early? The eagle could not hear her complaints. It turned around gracefully in the air and cried out loudly. Its hoarse and high-pitched voice spread far and wide. In less than 30 seconds, it was as if the forest had come alive, and birds of prey kept converging in this place. Thea kept shooting from below, but the eagle was extremely agile. It dodged left and right. Even with Thea's excellent archery skills, it took her a total of 5 arrows to shoot it down. It was too late. Thea looked at the black shadows that appeared in the distance and used the eye of Horus to observe them. There were a total of 17 birds of different sizes and colors. They were obviously not of the same species. She didn't know if these eagles were stimulated by her divine eyes or because the first eagle had been shot down, but their speed suddenly increased by a large margin. How unlucky. Thea quickly put the quiver on her back. The arrows used to kill the wild boar had been retrieved. The Amazon's iron smelting skills were good, so the arrows could be used again. It was just that the tail feathers had dropped a lot, which affected the shooting accuracy. She activated her spiritual power and the eye of Horus, and the mechanical arm in her left hand was almost at full power. She drew the bow fully and aimed at a bird of prey with a white head and iron claws that was about to enter her shooting range. Huh? Is this a bald eagle? Thea was a little dumbfounded. Is this an American bird? This is the national bird of the United States of America. It was full of free democratic will. You have a Mediterranean climate here, how did this American bird fly here? Thea did not have time to complain. She shot down the national bird that represented the spirit of freedom and democracy without any guilt. She then drew the bow again and aimed at the second bird. As she continued to draw her bow and arrow, she shot down 6 different birds of prey. The female warriors had already hidden themselves. Many of these birds had not been seen in the past 5,000 years. God knows which rock crevice they had jumped out from. Their mission was very simple, which was to continue to watch until one side was completely wiped out by the other. Thea had no time to calmly shoot arrows at this time. The speed of the eagles was too fast. Compared to them, the wild boars were as slow as turtles. She constantly used trees and other obstacles to avoid the enemy's attacks. One of them was too close to her, and she punched its head with her mechanical arm at full power. Damn it, if she had known that he would be so savage, she would have brought a knife. That punch was indeed very powerful, but as someone who was slightly obsessed with cleanliness, she still felt very uncomfortable. Half of her body was splashed with blood, and some white and yellow things were splashed on her body, making her feel extremely disgusted. But although she was disgusted, she had not reached the point where she could not walk after seeing blood. She constantly looked for the gap after the eagles attacked and before they took to the air. If they were far away, she would use the bow and arrow. If they were close, she would directly smash them. When the birds of prey reorganized in the air, they found that there were only 6 of them left. They looked at each other. 2 of them were slightly hesitant, while the other 4 were very smart and arranged a progressive charge. You and I, one after another. This tactic really gave Thea a headache, but she was not stupid. She used the gap between dodging to pick up a few goose egg-sized stones on the ground. Every time an eagle swooped down, she would throw the stones without looking. Regardless of whether she hit her target or not, she would quickly shift her position to avoid the eagle's next attack. The effectiveness of this tactic was astonishing. Very quickly, 2 more eagles were beaten until their bones were broken. They fell to the ground like rags and howled in pain, waiting for the god of death's favor. Chapter 200. Humph, Thea glanced at them. 4 left. Come on. Fight till dawn. Actually, she was just standing there and talking. The aggressive and murderous ones were already on the ground. The few in the sky didn't have the guts to do so. They were only able to survive until now because of their small size and fast speed. However, for some unknown reason, they didn't want to fly away. When they were high up in the sky, they would occasionally growl and stare fiercely at Thea on the ground. Damn it. At least Thea knew that she was still in the competition. Otherwise, she would have already taken out her skateboard to beat them up. Taking advantage of the fact that she couldn't get up, the feathered beasts continued to patrol in the sky and refused to disperse. Lend me your bow. Thea shouted at the female warrior who was hiding in a tree. Although the female warrior didn't understand what she meant, she still threw her bow to Thea. Her bow was just an ordinary one. There was nothing special about it. She didn't feel guilty about throwing it. However, 2 seconds later, she couldn't stay calm anymore. She pointed at Thea and asked her companion, She can't be thinking of. Her companion was also a little dumbfounded. She's going to use 2 bows. She's too strong. Thea pulled both bows at the same time. The arrow was sandwiched between the 2 bows. The tail feathers were placed in a cross on the bowstring. She aimed at the lowest flying bee hawk. Swoosh! The initial speed of this arrow exceeded 300 meters per second, and in the blink of an eye, it stopped at a height of 1,000 meters. The huge kinetic energy pierced through the left wing of the wasp hawk, and it fell to the ground in a crooked manner. Thea didn't stop. She shot 2 more smaller sparrowhawks down. However, when she was about to shoot the last red-bellied sparrowhawk, she found that the latter had crazily increased its altitude. In the blink of an eye, it was hovering in the sky at an altitude of 5,000 meters. It looked at the ground with lingering fear. Thea was in a difficult situation. She didn't admit that she had OCD. She just felt that it wasn't perfect to have one less bird. However, 5,000 meters was obviously beyond the range of a bow. Besides, this wasn't a horizontal shot. She was shooting from the bottom up. The difficulty was another level. Help me come up with an idea on how to shoot it down. Thea could only ask for help from the 3 onlookers. She did not know that the 3 girls were dumbfounded at this moment. 17 of the 18 birds of different sizes had been shot to death by her, and she herself was not injured at all. Her archery skills crushed them without any suspense. Hearing her question, the few of them looked at each other and shook their heads with a bitter smile. We're dealing with those on land. What they meant was that she had to think of a way to deal with those in the sky. Thea gave the eagles who were still breathing a final blow. Her method was extremely cruel as she tried to provoke the one in the sky. However, the other party was completely indifferent. It neither fled nor swooped down. It just cruised in the sky. No matter how heinous Thea was, it was determined not to come down for revenge. She had met a coward. Thea's first plan had failed, so she came up with another plan, which was to pretend to retreat. She called the 3 female warriors to clean up the battlefield. The 3 girls were relieved and went down the tree. They could not defeat 18 birds of prey, but now there was only one left. What was there to be afraid of? They had trained for thousands of years. They would not lose in a one-on-one fight. Thea strung all the eagles into a string and dragged them side by side with the few wild boars. What she meant was, look at you guys. You're the overlords of the sky. Aren't you being treated the same as the wild boars? Let me ask you, are you angry? Sure enough, the red-bellied eagle in the sky had suffered a great psychological trauma. Its companions were all killed, and it was the only one who survived. Now that the enemy had humiliated the body of a brave warrior, it could not stand it anymore. Feeling the eagle's agitation, Thea added fuel to the fire and brazenly glanced at it with the eye of Horus. A low cry was heard, and the sound quickly spread from the sky to the ground. The red-bellied eagle that was controlled by anger completely gave up on the idea of flying again. It did not reserve any energy and increased its speed to the maximum. It only wanted to pierce a hole in this blasphemous creature. It did not care whether it would die or not. Come on. In the face of the red-bellied eagle's desperate charge, Thea finally found the feeling of blood boiling. This opponent was worthy of respect. She focused her mind and aimed at the red-bellied eagle that was rapidly approaching her. The distance between the 2 sides was getting closer and closer. Thea could see every feather on the eagle's body, but she did not rush to release the arrow. This state of not shooting was a burden to her, and it would also interfere with the opponent. She was waiting for the best time to shoot. Sure enough, her arrow-like gaze was sensed by the sensitive red-bellied eagle. Its original desperate charge was slightly changed. Just when it was thinking about whether to maintain the original speed or change the angle, Thea took advantage of its hesitation and instantly released the bowstring. An ordinary-looking arrow gradually grew larger in the red-bellied eagle's eyes and finally pierced through it. Ah! Thea raised the bow and shouted to the sky. The 3 female warriors were also encouraged by her success. They pulled out their swords at the same time and roared to the sky. After shouting a few more times, Thea felt much better. Ever since she met the Time Wanderer on Purgatory Island, her journey had not been smooth. Now, she had fallen to such a desolate island, and it was impossible for her to return home. These heavy facts had been pressing down on her not-so-broad shoulders. The exhilarating slaughter today had finally allowed her to vent most of the frustrations in her heart. At the same time, she had also gotten rid of the influence on her personality after fusing with the unicorn. She was just herself. She liked battles that made one's blood boil. She was not some compassionate Sirthas. She had no interest in being a righteous superhero. She just wanted to be herself. After washing away the lead, Thea felt that her entire soul had become abnormally clean. Although her strength did not improve at all, she felt very comfortable and happy. She sighed in her heart. I really don't have the fate of a protagonist. Every time the protagonists had an epiphany, they would level up by leaps and bounds. I, on the other hand, have not improved at all. Moreover, the protagonists had all encountered great disasters. If it was light, they would be forced to cultivate again. If it was serious, their families would be wiped out. What about me? I only killed a few wild boars and birds, and I had an epiphany. Just thinking about it made me feel low. She shouted to the female warriors happily, put them on the ground. Let's continue hunting. Although the female warriors did not know why she suddenly became so energetic, they still followed her happily. The scene was full of honor. They felt that they would see an outsider crowned with the divine name of Artemis with their own eyes. This was an honor for Thea, and it was also a wonderful thing for them to praise for a long time. Next, the animals living in the dense jungle found that their peaceful lives were broken. Many of the large animals that looked delicious were unlucky. This island was a product of unscientific research, and the animals in the jungle fully demonstrated this point. Many animals living in the tropical, temperate, and even cold zones were discovered by Thea's pervasive psychic power, and then regretfully fell under her sharp arrows.